G'day Flosstube, Anna aka Mandala back with another stitching update. It is April 30, tomorrow's Mania. Everybody excited? For those of you doing Mania anyway. This is a channel about cross stitch, and today I have a bunch of my usual whips that I've been working on for the last 2 weeks. I have a small bit of stash, Mania related, and we'll have a quick recap of what I'm doing for Mania. For anybody who's joining us for the first time, A, welcome. B, normally I do an update video every 2 weeks or so, but for the purposes of Mania, I suspend that, and we will be moving to a vlog style filming, and I'll try and post once a week and then change projects once a week. That will be the aim. We shall see how much life goes. So if this is your first time, this is the standard video that you get now. The next coming couple are going to be a bit oddball. Anyway. Excuse me. Coughing's still here. Back again. Another inhaler. Still not doing anything. Anyway, so whip updates. I have actually, you can tell life has settled down a bit because I've actually had a bit more variation in my stitching. So I've got 4 here plus I'll start with Oliver's stocking. I think last time you saw it, I had done all of the stitching, but I hadn't yet put the buttons on it. So hopefully I have a picture I can insert to show you what it was like with the buttons and everything on it. But the stocking itself is already in the mail, on its way to Tia at Calm Creations. And she's going to finish it for me so that I don't have to. So thank you very much, Tia, because I don't know, for some reason I just dread finishing stockings. So I will do the usual sort of close-up FFO video once I get the stocking back. But if you're watching this, Tia, honestly, no rush. So long as it's back before Christmas, we're all good. The other things I actually do have in my possession to show you. I have been working on in the evenings on the Aura of Autumn, the full coverage piece. This is a Leonid Afimov, charted by Artecy, and the glare is Pain. So this piece actually had its 2-year anniversary yesterday because I started this on my husband and I's wedding anniversary 2 years ago. Mostly just because it reminds me of one particular evening walking along the canals in Paris together. So seemed a good choice for the wedding anniversary start. Yeah, I'm working just at the moment on this panel with the park bench. Have not even considered starting those two. We are about the top of that park bench. In fact, in the last 2 weeks, I've actually finished the last of the park bench itself, and we're working this direction towards the inside of the piece. It is all bundled up in a Q-snap, so you're not going to be able to actually see that much of the surrounding stitching. But you can just see the top of the park bench. And I think last time I showed you, I was over here somewhere-ish doing one of those columns. This is the last column in the page, so I will basically finish off that column. And then at that point, I'm kind of missing the world map. So I might take, at this point, I haven't sewed the other Q-snap yet, cover. So I either have to take this one off the Q-snap and put the map on, or get off my bum and sew the other Q-snap cover so that I can put the map on its bigger frame. We shall see what I feel like doing. The point is, I'll try and get to the map after I finish this page. So generally, I've been working in 10 by 10 columns in sort of a zigzag fashion up and down. This last column is actually about 13 stitches wide rather than 10, just because that's what finishes the page. Threads everywhere, obviously parking, and I just kind of stopped in the middle of stitching to film this. But so probably 2.5 columns, maybe almost 3 columns with progress over the last couple of weeks. Not speeding along by any stretch of the imagination, but for just evening putsy stitching, I didn't think that was too bad progress. And quite a few other things got done at some point too. Yeah, so that is that. Oh, this fabric, I think it's a 32 count Monaco. It's an even weave. It's a pity it's a full coverage because it's got the lovely sort of mottling in it. It's the same fabric I used on Oliver's stocking. You'll actually be able to see the mottling on Oliver's stocking though. So project 2 that I worked on at some point in the 2 weeks, there's 0 order to any of this, guys. It's just what's on the pile, is the piece that my daughter is designing for me. So this is an original design. My daughter drew this and charted it up based on my suggestions. It's based on a song by an Australian comedian. Link and usual disclaimer below. And the idea is that I will stitch this piece 3 times, once for each of the kids as they leave home, and I need to get my act into gear with eldest. So I have predominantly been stitching in here to date. In fact, that progress will be in the shell. But as well, I had intended to swap that island out. My daughter actually charted it in 2 different DMCs, but I thought I would stitch the entire island in the background. The original plan was to use the Gloriana forest, but I am having such a hard time at the moment getting hold of that particular thread. I need it for a couple of the Chatelaines. It's a gorgeous thread. Would totally use it if I could get my hands on it. But because I can't, I've bought a couple of silks for you to audition to go in there instead. So this is where the piece is up to so far. And I think these are the sort of shells that I was working on. That one I probably finished up a little bit. And these are the 2 Glorianas that I've got for the hill, which both look a bit on the blue-green side for me, rather than, you know, the bottle's very yellow-green. But I'm actually thinking this lighter one is the one I like better. At least here, the Australian bush is very rarely that bright, deep, rich greens. It does tend to be a bit on the sickly yellow-green side of things for a lot of the year. So I thought a bit more of a lighter green in the island might be better. Yeah, so those to play with. I'm not 100% sold, but they're what I have currently in front of me, and I expect that's the one I like of the 2. If you guys have any opinion, let me know. But I thought it'd be fun to put something a bit special on the island, because that whole piece is basically based on the beach that's just on the road from us. We've set up a still life sort of situation, and then you can see our island in the background. That's Maggie Island. So when the kids have flown the coop and Christmas time comes, they will know where to find Mom and Dad waiting for them. That's the whole idea behind that piece. So should keep that one out and do some more progress, but with Mania coming, I may not get much this month. Should. So this week I actually ended up spinning the wheel twice and listening to it twice, which is highly unusual. Yeah, note that when it comes time for Mania plans. This may be a problem in my theory. So one of the times it spun my daughter's Enchantress of the Abyss. I will have to dig up a before photo, because I'm not entirely sure where I was last time I worked on this, or the last time you guys saw it anyway. I know all I did in a couple of days was fill in more of the gold and other blings that were missing. I think there's a little bit of new greens, but it was predominantly stitching in some of those nuisance. Krynic number 8, I think 8 is a thicker one, the thicker braids. So yeah, a lot of that to go, but I try and do a little bit and then swap out to some regular DMC and do another string of Krynic. I should probably do another bit of Krynic before I put it away. Just because, yeah, little by little, get through it. It's not my favorite. I really kind of wish I'd swap that thicker braid out for treasure braid as well, but you know, it is what it is. Next time. So actually, that's another aside. For those of you who hang around a while, this is actually my second Bella Fillipina mermaid. My first one, I will insert a picture, has made its way to the States and been fully framed and is now in the hands of my niece, who thinks it's the bee's knees. And I will have to quote from memory. Her mother said she wants to hang it in her bedroom, but only after she paints her bedroom in a seafoam green, makes the headboard of her bed into like a clamshell with the bubbles coming out of it. Oh, and she said she wanted her mother to take down all the weird art. Her mother's big into art. And put up all mermaids that made people happy and, you know, made them want to feel like they were mermaids underwater. So I think that translates into she's enjoying her mermaid. So hopefully Maya will enjoy her mermaid just as much. So yeah, that is Enchantress of the Abyss by Bella Fillipina Designs. It is on an opal 28 count cashel called Midnight Mermaid from Under the Sea Fabrics. So she is gorgeous, and she's going to be very blingy if I survive the Krynic. So that was spin 1 we listened to. Spin, actually I think that was the second spin we listened to. Spin 1 we listened to was the Tahiti Mandala. And before I forget, this is 28 count cashel that I dyed myself, and I'm pretty sure it actually goes like that. Not that, you know, being a mandala, you can't really tell. But I'm pretty sure that the turtle that I did is the top turtle. Yeah, that's about right. Anyway, so as you can see, we have 10 little backstitched, fully complete shells, and we have still a full set of hair and no additional gray, at least not from the shells. So, plenty of additional gray, guys, but it's all from the bloody work. I think I am on to a winner as to how to make those shells. They're still putsy because they're 1/1 stitching, but at least they go in properly where they're meant to be, and it's not a big drama to sort them out. So for Belinda, pay attention, because this is how I managed to work it out. First thing, now even if you have the digital chart, when I tell you to print things, there's a reason I'm telling you to print things. Second of all, this applies specifically to the mandalas where Martina has charted in the main chart 1/1, but you are going to use her little back up. Where Martina has charted in the main chart 2/1, but she has given you a 1/1 inset that you are going to use instead. Okay, make sense? If she's just putting the 1/1 straight in the main chart, ignore all of this. So, first thing decide whether or not you have 4 repetitions of your pieces, your 1/1 bits, or 8. Okay, if you have 4 pieces, print the inset chart, the color, and the black and white key, sticky tape it all together so that you can have it by your side. Even if you have the tablet next to you, print this next to you with the chart, label, color keys, all in one piece. Okay, if you have 8, take exactly this thing, dump it in a image editor, and flip it. Either horizontally, vertically, it doesn't matter. Mirror it, so then you see your color keys wind up all, I've vertically flipped this. Your color keys are all backwards, but your symbols will be right. Don't worry about the writing and the rest of it. Your symbols will be right, and your symbols will now match what is actually visible in your flipped chart. So that's step 1. Get ready for what you're doing. Print those things because it will make your life a lot easier. Okay, step 2 is go to your main chart and pick a color that you are going to stitch, usual 2/2, that goes close to where your 1/1 stitching is going to be so that you have something to count from. So in this case, you know, all these sort of darker sands that run along the bottom, they would have been a good option because then I can count pretty reliably just across a couple of stitches to the 1/1 stitching. So the only trick with that step is don't cross any back stitch lines on the main chart. Okay? Pick whatever color suits, gets you close to whatever you need to stitch in. Just don't stitch anything that has a back stitch line in that square. Right. Now, for every single 1/1 item, you have to repeat this next little step. And do yourself a favor, do not try and cheat like I do. Do not try and get clever. Just do one item at a time. You will thank yourself later. So pick the item you're going to work on. Look at the back stitch lines on the, well, first of all, look at the back stitch lines on the main chart. And literally tip your book around until you figure out which orientation your chart needs to be in to match the lines on your main chart. Okay, that's why we printed this, because we can flip it in any direction. And actually with the, between the regular chart and the flipped, vertical flip chart, I actually have 8 possibilities. So look at it straight up. No, my fan-shaped shell doesn't match either of the ones I have. Rotate it 90, check them, rotate it 90 until I find exactly the orientation that matches what's in the 2x2 chart. Sometimes you do have to get a bit careful. One of these, yeah, it's this fan-shaped one. You see how that edge is 2.5 squares tall, whereas this edge is only 1.5. Okay, so that's really the only way I could see to definitively pick whether my orientation matched was that little bit of straight line. It's not entirely symmetrical, but it's stinking close, so it's hard. So figure out which way your chart needs to be, put it down, and don't move it. Because you've sticky taped the symbol list to your page, when you rotate the charts, your symbols will rotate, so everything will look, you know, you can just read your symbols. Your V's may become upside down, but at least it'll be the same on the symbol chart, and you'll be able to tell exactly which symbol it was meant to be. That gets very helpful when you're talking, you know, a triangle that's in the top left corner, but when you rotate it, it's on the bottom right. Sticky tape it all together and just rotate it around until you find the orientation you're after. Once you've got that, look at the back stitch specifically for that item that you're going to put in and figure out where your first 1/1 stitch needs to be. So I find something distinct, like this little jagged corner, and I count from the 2/2 stitching on my main chart across to the back stitching on that jagged corner, and that becomes my starting point for that shell. I have a tendency to want to use up the color I have on my needle. Suck it up, change colors on your needle, use the one that's in the corner. Okay, the counting and whatnot is hard enough. Don't make life harder for yourself. Change the thread in your needle, stick with what's right there, obvious, easy to do. Once you get that 1/1 stitching started, if you can wrangle it, do all of the 1/1 in that shell in one sitting. Okay, don't do about 5 stitches and try and come back 2 weeks later and figure out which 5 stitch you did. Okay, you're only making life hard for yourself, trust me. So once you get that entire shell, whatever your item is in that you're working on, take a well-earned break if you need it, come back another day to do shell 2. Okay, do all of the 1/1 stitches in your section before you go on to this next step. And again, it's one of those things that small doses is probably the way to go, because there's enough concentration that it's not worth burning yourself out trying to get this done. So once you have all those little pieces in the section, so I actually broke this into 2 sections, then go back to your main chart, which has got all your 2/2 stitching, and fill in the rest of that 2/2. Where you come close to your 1/1, it's not going to quite be right. Just go ahead, if you have one square stitched in 1/1, make it a 3/4 cross. If you need to make it a 1/4 stitch, just fudge the 2/2 with whatever color you've got on your needle, that's close right to that thread, and fudge around your 1/1s till you fill everything in. After you've done that, you can go through and add the back stitching as Martina charted. I have not noticed any difference between the back stitch in the 2/2 charts and the 1/1 charts. So I tend to do my back stitching off the main chart where I can see everything as a reference. When you are doing counting, where possible for things like counting your back stitch and counting the other 2/2 stitches, don't count off the 1/1. Count everything off the 2/2. The only time you should be counting off the 1/1 is when you are actually stitching those little items. Everything else, try and count off the 2/2. So you can see I managed 2 full sections. One of those was, the first one I worked out this pattern was an absolute nightmare as I tried to figure it out. The second one in, piece of cake. Didn't rip anything out, didn't have any problems. It's worth doing. And as much as I hate changing thread colors when I don't need to, it is worth sucking it up, changing your thread color so you are starting from the easy spot and just, changing it back again when you're ready for that other color. Don't try and be efficient. It won't help you. So with Tahiti, Martina actually had charted colors in the internal back stitch of some of these shells. You can see there's red lines and there's some sort of brown. So I did this as it is, as Martina had drawn on the chart. I noticed somebody else is at a very similar spot to me on the Chatelaine group, and Martina's written instructions said to do all of the shells in the black 310. She didn't say anything about doing colors on the internal. So this other person had opted to do the internal backstitching in the 310 as well. And I think I'm with her. I think I like how it looks in the black better than in the color. So I will probably rip the backstitching on those. It's really just those two. There is like 2 tiny lines of backstitching in color on those pointy shells. And I will probably rip those out and redo it with the 310 because I think there's more contrast with the 310 essentially. But that's not today's project. Today is, reveling in the fact that I have 10 out of 40 shells done in that piece. So haul and mania kind of go hand in hand because the only thing I've got for haul at the moment is specifically for mania. I went and bought myself a hank of PR094, and this is going to be for pandemic. It's not quite as bright as it looked on the website. I think those white fribbles are where the hank is tied up. I'm going to have to figure out how to get this thing into a manageable state, which I think we'll be all right with that. And pandemic will be able to go on the potential start list for mania because I think I've opted to do pandemic on a 36 count linen, just white. Although I could think about dyeing it, it might look nice in a light gray dye or something like that with these colors. These hanks look so much bigger in the camera than it does in person. I couldn't believe it when my husband pulled out this package from the mailbox and he said it was from Silks For You, and I'm like, there's nothing there. The hanks look massive in the camera, but they're not really. That was a total sidetrack. So the pandemic can officially go on the possible start list for mania because that has arrived and I have the fabric. My initial plan for mania was essentially just to pull kits and charts and fabrics and stuff that I already had without having to go buy anything, but obviously I've cheated just a little bit there. So I will have to insert a picture because I don't have one handy, but I just had a minute where I thought it wasn't recording. Tomorrow, for the start of mania, I will start the Bird of Paradise sampler. That will be start number 1. I will also spin my wheel. And the theory goes that whatever the wheel spins, I will start on week 2. Now, having said that, I've just fessed up to the fact that 90% of the time I spin the wheel, I ignore it. So we shall see what reality actually brings. We'll cross that bridge when we come to that. I fully reserve the right to alter the wheel at the last minute based on what I feel to try and avoid the fact the wheel will spin something I don't really want to start. So every time I spin the wheel, you'll probably notice there's a few different variations of what's on there. I won't go through all the projects that I'm potentially putting on there. I did that a few videos ago. But a few changes to note. I think I will put the Fairy Tale Town kit on the wheel. I'm a bit hesitant to, start a third massive, more or less full coverage sort of thing. But I think we'll put it on there and see. I've got Even Leaf coming in the mail to fit that. So we should be able to start that. There was like a kit with a sailboat. I've just taken that off. I'm not in the mood. Other random changes probably that I'm not even aware of in terms of what amused me on the day. So next week I will endeavor to film every single day in a vlog style. Count yourself lucky if you get 5 out of 7 days because you're probably doing really well at that rate. And then I will post videos once a week. with the progress of what I've stitched on during that week. And I will basically aim to, next week, only stitch the Paradise Sampler, because that's that week's project. That does leave me wanting to do a few things like finish that Aura of Autumn page before Mania starts, because I don't really want to put that away for a month and then have 20 stitches left to finish it. So that's today's show. Until next week, have a good week, have a good Mania. Whatever you're doing this year, enjoy it, and I will see you with all the awesome new starts.